Thank you for coming to this session, apparently the cool one. And thank you to UNU-WIDER for sponsoring this amazing event. I'm going to present a working paper that is going to be also a chapter about social protection in Chile. This is part of a larger project from WIDER about social protection in the Global South. And so it's a work that I've done with Armando Barrientos from Manchester. Well, the structure of the presentation, it seems very long, so I'm glad that I have more time now. It's because this chapter is divided in 10 parts, but basically, first I will describe briefly the social protection matrix of Chile, which is it has a lot of elements, so it's a bit quite large to explain. Its evolution over time, the financial flows, how is finance, the outcomes of this different part of the matrix, the pension system, which is the largest part of this matrix, and also that concentrates most of the critiques and have led the reforms lately. And then the results, and what is the evaluation of the results, the incentives gaps, and the sustainability of the system. So, as you know, Chile is a high-income country, according to the World Bank now, with an average income of $17,000 annually. But however, this large income, and we have figures that correspond to that level of income. For example, the average mortality rate is 80 years old. 50% of our population has at least secondary school. 40% of the people between 25 to 34 have higher education. However, inequality is quite large and persistent in the country. If we take the official figures, official measures, the Gini coefficient is 43%. But if we if we go and see wealth inequality is a lot larger. According to the World Inequality Data Set, is over 80%, the Gini coefficient of wealth. And in this context, social protection has evolved a lot in the country. We have an old tradition of social assistance, which is based in the 1940s, the first programs, and we had a large transformation during the dictatorship, which basically privatized mostly social protection. And we have a matrix that we will describe as divided in 3 pillars: mandatory savings, occupational insurance, and social assistance. And these 3 pillars also have evolved in this at this time. So we can divide the analysis in 3 periods. The welfare state, or initial welfare state, between 1920 and before the dictatorship, 73. Then all the neoliberal reforms done during the dictatorship until the 90s. And then after the recovery of democracy, the social policies that try to sort of guarantee income levels after the 2000s to the present. So as I mentioned before, our matrix structure, the social policy, is based in 3 main pillars. The first one, we call it mandated savings. The reforms during the dictatorship, what it did is basically that most of the protection, for example, the pension system, we are administered by private companies called AFPs. Each worker has the obligation as a mandate from the government, from the state, to save 10% of the income in this individual accounts. So you save for your future pension. And these institutions charge a fee that it range between 0.7 to 1.45% of the earnings as well. They put these savings into a private accounts, and when the age of your retirement arrives, then you can get your pension. The age for retirement is 60 for women and 65 for men. The health system works similarly. You save 7% of your income, of your earnings, in health insurance. It can be private or public. The private one is called ISAPRES, which are the institutions that provide the health insurance. And the public one is FONASA, which covers 82% of the population. And the system is very segregated, so the public system concentrates women, older adults, and individuals with pre-existing condition, basically the ones that are more expensive for the system, and or either have higher cost in the private system, or basically are not welcome in the private system. So the ISAPRES can select upon your pre-existing conditions. We also have an unemployment insurance, which is also individuals' accounts, but also has a component that is in a way, it has a solidarity component. This is only for formal employers, and your employer is the one that has to pay 3% of the monthly wages in this insurance. It has different type of divisions. So what is fully paid by the employer for fixed term contracts is split when you have an indefinite contract. So and a split 2.4% for the employer and 0.6% for the employee. It also part of, as I said before, goes to a solidarity fund. And the key feature of all these mandated savings is that most of them are not redistributing or combining risks. Basically, what we have is you get what you pay. That's the outcome at the end. We also have occupational insurance, which is legacy scheme for armed force. So before the 81, what we had is a pay-as-you-go system. And for different sort of occupations, you had different sort of like units that manage the funds. And in the 81, the reform basically said people that are new in the system are obligated to put their money in the AFPs, the private ones, but people that was already working could choose between the pay-as-you-go system or the private one. Most of the workers went to the AFP system because for two reasons. You used to put 20% of your salary in this in these schemes. So basically your net income was increased if you changed to the new one. And also you could, if you were working before, you sort of like had rights over the amount of money, like a compensation. And that money was gonna be like savings put in your individual account with an interest rate of 4% over the inflation. So most people change, but people that later took the IFP system could sort of like had at the time of retirement this bono de reconocimiento, recognition bond, for the time that they were in the previous system. So that's the legacy. But armed forces never took this new option. So they were not under the IFP system, and they are not. So they are in this pay-as-you-go, and they are the only ones that could choose now, or basically they don't choose. They are in that system now. So that's why it's called a legacy scheme only for the armed forces. We also have war-related insurance accidents financed by the employer with contributions that are 0.95% of the wage bill. And this was also extended for self-employed since 2019. And the social assistance component, also the third pillar in this matrix, is so. Given all these weaknesses of the private system or of the mandate savings, the state also has few programs related to pensions, and also a series of subsidies that cover the most vulnerable families with different percentage coverage. So, for example, the pension called General Pensión Garantizada Universal, Universal Guaranteed Pension, covers 90% of the people with the most vulnerable people. So basically, only 10%, the richest 10%, is the only one that is out. And also, we have subsidies for families, different types that also cover 60% of the poorest household. And we have several different social programs that are wrapped into a bigger one that is called Seguridad de Oportunidades. It have changed name over time, and is part of the integral net of social protection of the country. We also have employment subsidies that provide temporary 6 months supplement income, but it's also based on individual savings. And we have a part that is funded by the state, and it covers 40% of the poorest households. So in this graph, we can see the size of the bubbles represent the size of the population, the amount of population that is covered by these different units and subsidies. So, for example, if you can see, the largest one is a subsidy for families, which cover the largest amount of population, and is the highest. It has the highest public expense. And you have, for example, here in the horizontal axis, you have the annual public expense, and in the vertical one, you have the monthly transfer. So the highest, for example, is the unemployment insurance in terms of monthly transfer, but is not the highest in terms of how much of the total budget is being very slow. Sorry. So as I mentioned before, we can divide the time that we are analyzing in 3 periods. So the welfare state, before the building of the welfare state, before the 1973, we had this insurance that were created for former workers. 75%, by 73, 75% of the workers were fully covered by this insurance scheme. Then the neoliberal reforms were put in place during the dictatorship rule and sort of shift the model to a market-oriented one based in this mandatory individual savings. It was a huge reform that it was also inspired many changes in different countries in Latin America as well. So people had this savings in their individual accounts, were managed by the AFPs. We also had this, as I mentioned before, health and unemployment insurance, and only the military forces kept this separate pay-as-you-go system. And after the dictatorship, the democratic government increased the public spending in social security. 2 major reforms were in place. The first one in 2008. Before 2008, people that were not working in the formal sector didn't have any coverage, not a pension. And then the reforms what I've done is like increase the social pillar or for the poorest, or the women as well, because they were not participating in the formal sector. And we have these wrapper programs that have, in Chile, against the rest of Latin America, we didn't have a lot of cash transfer, conditional cash transfer. So our programs were unconditional, only based in the decile of income, so the income you had or the family income. But we had more than 140 at some points. So these wrapper programs like Chile Solidario, and now that changed name to Oportunidades recently, help to connect people to all this offer, the state offer of social programs. So it was a big improvement for people to sort of like get to know all the social programs. I'm gonna skip this. Well, in this graph, you can see how from the 1990s, the first graph shows public expenditure, how public expenditure have increased during this from 1990 to the present, with a peak during the pandemic, obviously, because of all the social assistance for the people in need in the COVID-19 pandemic. But you can also see how the social protection budget has slightly decreased and only has increased after the 2020 reform. And if you see the graph at the bottom, you can also notice that this slightly decrease in the social protection is driven by the pro-old expenditure, old age expenditures. As I mentioned before, one of the biggest burdens for the social protection spends has to do with the pensions that they pay, the one that is the universal pension, and also the one that comes from the previous system. Yes. In terms of the redistribution power of these policies, one of the ways to measure the effectiveness of social protection is how much changes before and after the subsidies. So, and as you can see, the Gini coefficient of market and disposable income, so basically before and after the redistribution, does not change much in Chile, and that's one of the key features of our system. So just to wrap up, Chile's matrix is very fragmented, stratified by class and age, and political unstable in key areas. It's limited, it gives limited redistribution and insurance. Most of the poverty, the reduction in poverty that we have experienced is because of growth, not because of social protection. And the key lesson is that system-centered and individual savings without redistribution struggle to provide adequate protection in unequal and informal labor markets. Thank you for listening.